Right, good morning, welcome back. Now today, with this being the final video of the Heritage Softail project, let's have a quick recap of everything I've done on the project so far. Now after rolling the bike in and removing a few of the adornments that I didn't want, the first job was a 3 oils change. Started with engine oil and I purged it fully to get all of the old oil out, then did the gearbox oil change, that's always worth doing, and a primary oil at the same time. And while you've got the derby cover off, you can do the clutch adjustment while you're at it. Next job was the brake fluid, front and rear. It definitely needed doing. In fact, I've never bought a bike where it didn't need doing. So that job is always top of the list. Now, the next thing was to treat the bike to a new battery. Now, obviously they're not a service item. You'd have to replace them at a given mileage or anything, but it's a 17-year-old bike and it did look like the original battery. So it had a pretty good innings. And when I checked it, it was slightly down on voltage. So I treated it to a motor bat, not just for the 2 extra terminals that you can tab your accessories onto, but also for the higher cold cranking amps, because the Harley needs all the help it can get. So there we are, a new motor bat battery. Now the next thing I absolutely had to deal with was the dreadful handlebars. I personally just cannot get on with these. You can see you've got this flat, straight profile, so you're riding up the road and it's quite uncomfortable, and I changed them for these Harley Davidson Street Bob handlebars. Much better, an instant upgrade. Now I wanted to treat myself to some heated handlebar grips, and not just the budget ones that tab straight to the battery with a little controller on the bars. No, for this bike I wanted something a little bit more special. And these were a gift from somebody very special. So for those late night and early morning rides where the temperature can really drop, these will be perfect for the job. Another little interim job which didn't really feature as a standalone video was removing this unwanted USB charger. It's faulty in the first place, it wasn't working perfectly. You could plug your lead into it and sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't, but also it was clumsy looking on the handlebars, a little bit too much clutter, and the bracket that held it on was broken and replaced with a cable tie, so that was definitely for removing. Now another little job which you might remember was flipping the mirrors from underslung to over the top. Previous owner had chosen to run them underneath. It's perfectly possible to do that. You just swap them side to side and you mount them upwards through the holes rather than downwards. Personally, I like the mirrors at shoulder level where I just glance at them on an eye line, not having to look down into the mirror, which is effectively taking your eyes off the road. So there's a kind of a small safety issue there. Personally, I still think they look better at the top anyway. So that was a personal preference. I flipped the mirrors from bottom to top. Now another little job I absolutely had to deal with was this wobbly shifter. If you remember, this thing was waggling around everywhere, and all it took was a small brass bushing made up to pack out the distance that causes it to go floppy. Loads of you said just replace the bushings inside. They're plastic, and even when they're brand new, there's too much slop in them. So replacing the bushings would not have fixed it. It still would have needed a little spacer. And I've heard so far that since I made that video, loads of you've done this using just a stack of washers, and it's improved your sloppy levers. And obviously, the lion's share of this entire project, a full repaint. Not only that, I stripped off and dealt with all of the rust that was existing, converted it to a stable compound with a rust converter, and then sealer and primer and the top coat paint. But most importantly, up underneath those fenders, they're now fully and properly underguarded. So hopefully this should last a lifetime without that nonsense ever happening again. And finally, in the last video we made, removing these 250 tin studs from the saddlebags and the skirt of the rider seat. So today we're going to refit the saddlebags onto the bike and the rider seat obviously, but I didn't bother doing anything to the pillion seat because I have a cunning plan for that, and we'll come to that at the end. Let's get these fitted. Right, going to put the bags on the bike. When I took them apart and pulled out the contents, a few of you commented on this metal frame. They go inside the bag and they keep the top of the bag open. They stop them sagging because famously Heritage Softail bags, they sag like Nana's wellies, and this frame seems to do the job. It goes inside and it bolts to the mount. It's thick metal bar and a piece of heavyweight flat stock, and it's all heavily welded together. I don't know what they are. Please don't ask me for a link because I've never seen them before. They came with the bike, but if you know what they are and you know a name, then share it with us all, because anyone with Heritage Softail bags can have them nice and square and sitting in the shape they should be rather than like Nana's wellies. Right, now at this point, I'd normally throw the back seat on, and there it is, everything rebuilt. But it's still got the studs in. I'm not going to be using the back seat at all, because for that, I've got a different idea. Now, between 2008, this bike, and 2009, the very next one, the Heritage Softail Classic went through some significant changes to the model. Now, the 2008 model had the tubeless rims. Now, if you look at the rims on this, you can see that curved profile to the rim itself. That's actually a cast aluminium rim with spokes. And inside there's a big rubber seal, runs all the way around the inside, and they're effectively tubeless. But in 2009, the following year after this bike, they went back to regular conventional steel rims with an inner tube. Another significant change was those dreadful handlebars. I think eventually they listened to their customers, and those handlebars that this bike came with in 2009, they had these. A sloping profile to the handlebars, much more comfortable and a little tiny bit taller. Now finally, and most importantly for this project, was a big change to the pillion seat. They omitted the studs on the 2009 model. They just left them off completely, no studs at all, and they changed the shape significantly as well, which will not only be a benefit to my pillion, but also to me as well. I'll show you the 2009 seat that I've got that's going to be replacing this one. Right, first of all, let's just unbox it. You can have a look side by side at exactly how different they are. Now the first obvious difference, no studs. That's exactly what we wanted, and that's the fundamental reason I bought this seat. Secondly, there are two comfort upgrades that we're both going to enjoy. I'll show you what I mean. If we just look at each one in comparison to the seating area that it provides for the pillion, take a look at the 2008 seat. The way it slopes away from about this point onwards, none of this part of the seat is any use to the pillion, only really from about here backwards. If we actually measure that, even if we're generous with it, we're looking at about 9.5 inches of effective seating area for the pillion to use. But when we compare that to this seat, the 2009, the measurement on that, it's 14 inches of effective usable seat for the pillion to enjoy. And also, when you press them, that seat is dead flat. But this one's got a dish to it as well. So your pillion is sitting almost in a little bucket seat with all of that area to shift around and keep comfortable on a longer ride, because you do need to move about if you've been sat in the saddle for a while. And of course, immediately you might notice that the old 2008 seat is a lot wider. If you sit them side by side, you can see it there. But when you actually measure it, it's not as much of a difference as you think. If I put them side by side, we measure them, the old 2008 seat offers roughly 12.5 inches, maybe 13. If you look at the curvature, that's what you get in width. And on the 2009 seat, it's 12. So literally the difference, albeit looks quite significant, it's not. It's only an inch difference in width. And of course, most of all, there is a huge benefit in this seat for the rider. But for that, I'll have to show you on the bike. Now it fits on in exactly the same way, two little slots underneath, and then a screw at the back like every Harley seat. Now there it is, look at that immediately, that bolster that the rider gets to rest against. Now obviously I've tested this, I've screwed it on the bike and sat on it. It is so much more comfortable, it seriously is. I'm not slouching anymore, I just rest against that. And of course when you're riding with the pillion, that keeps you apart slightly. So when I accelerate and I shift back a bit in the seat, I'm not leaning on the pillion. She's got her own space, and of course it's a bigger space in the first place. So there it is. The 09 seat is a massive upgrade in so many ways, and it doesn't have any studs. There. Awesome. Okay, with everything assembled, let's give it a final once over with the leather food and then a good polish up and see what it looks like. Smells lovely, doesn't it? Okay, that's it, project done. But with the constraints of artificial light inside here and camera metering, you can never truly see the splendor of this awesome color. Indoors, it just looks black. So you really need to see it out in the sunshine. So join us in the next one for a ride in the sunshine and an outdoor walk round so you can see it in all its glory. I'll see you then.